We spent a lot of time on Saturday talking about what Ohio State's loss to Michigan meant for Ohio State and Ryan Day. We need to talk about what it means for Michigan, because if Sherrone Moore can take this Michigan team and beat that Ohio State team, add that to what we've learned over the past few weeks about what Michigan's NIL situation is and what their player acquisition strategy is shaping up to be. This could get really interesting in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, so there is going to be a large portion of this video, and rightfully so, dedicated to Bryce Underwood and all the players are going to get. But I want to make a point about Michigan that I didn't make yesterday that is important. It's that this season could have been a really bad start for Chiron Moore. Like, had they lost to Ohio State,
they could have been awful. They could have lost to Ohio State by 3 touchdowns. They could have lost to USC. Like, this could have been way worse. And I know it's not up to Michigan people's standards.
It's not, but at the same time, to actually go back and, rewatch the Ohio State game or relive it, there's so much to hate about the way that Ohio State performed in that game. But Chiron Moore, with very obvious, clear, and glaring roster issues, most of which are not his fault,
right?
Was able to get Ohio State and other teams on its schedule to play by its terms. And I think that is a very strong coaching performance.
Yeah.
And if you have issues or worry about the Jim Harbaugh-less Wolverines, that it seems to me that the Michigan that we got against Ohio State on Saturday had very strong remnants of the thing that made Michigan special for much of the last 3 years. So that we do get bogged down on what it means for the super team that, is in the playoff, but we do need to spend some time, and I'm happy we're doing this right now, giving Chiron Moore his flowers, because the coaching that he's illustrated in terms of culture, in terms of game plan, in terms of executing and forcing a team that frankly has 25 better players on their team than Michigan does to play their game, and not only play their game on the road in a rivalry after losing 3 in a row, but win. Like, that is a huge coaching statement, period.
Yes. And we talked about how difficult it is apparently for Ryan Day to prepare his team to play Michigan in terms of how do you keep, I hate to use the word vibes, but what are the vibes like all week when you're in a big game week like that?
Yeah.
That matters. Sherrone Moore seems to have figured that part out really well, because last year when he was the acting head coach, and he did beat Penn State and Ohio State as the acting head coach, made great decisions on game day. And we said, okay, this is great because we already know he's a good game day decision maker going into his head coaching tenure. But Jim Harbaugh was still around for the prep of those games. This is different. This is all his team, all his program. And he prepared them in a way where they went in there knowing they could beat Ohio State when no one else thought they could. And we can go back throughout the season. Finding a way to beat USC with Alex Orji leading the offense, where you were a one-dimensional offense. You declared what you were going to do, and you still did it anyway. Like, that is huge. The ability to do that with roster deficiencies, and now you do get to turn around and build the roster the way you want to. So we'll rewind a little bit.
I mean, they suckered Ryan Day into
playing their game. Yeah.
Where they kept running the ball into the teeth of the defense. I think they ran the ball like 28 times or 30 times or something, and like more than half of their runs went for 2 yards or fewer, and they kept doing it. And it's like Ohio State got sucked into and lost playing Michigan's game.
Yeah.
And that is in a game of this magnitude that defines you as a coach on both sides. To have your first guy do that, your first year guy do that for the second time, I think probably makes you feel like warm and fuzzy inside, and that's before he gets his guys in. So I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah. So last year, remember, Jim Harbaugh wins the national title. He was on the NFL schedule at that point. So I know there's a lot of people who think that there was a chance Jim Harbaugh was coming back to Michigan. He was never coming back to Michigan if he got offered an NFL job. That was not all of the, well, what happens with the NCAA? He's waiting for something to be added to his contract. No, he wasn't. He was waiting to see if he got an NFL job. And if he got an NFL job, he was leaving. And if he didn't, he was coming back. So he gets the Chargers job, and it's January 24th. At that point, anybody you would have been able to get quarterback-wise in the transfer portal is gone. You may be able to get somebody in the spring, but people don't really want to come after spring practice and have to learn the whole offense. Like, they want to be there with their teammates for spring. So they really had a problem at quarterback, at receiver, filling the roster. That will not be a problem this year. Wednesday is a great example of that. Wednesday, Bryce Underwood, the number one quarterback in the class of 2025 from Belleville, Michigan, is going to sign with Michigan. There's one piece of it. I would bet that we will see an older transfer portal quarterback coming to Michigan as well, who probably will be the presumed starter for next year, and Bryce Underwood develops under him.
And they also have Jaden Davis on the roster too,
right?
Which could be in the mix. I'm with you on the portal one.
And they're going to go get receivers.
Yep.
They're gonna if they have holes on the offensive line. Like, remember when Harbaugh was there when they needed to plug holes on the offensive line? The Ladarius Henderson and Drake Nugent coming in for that national championship team were plug-in guys who were veterans from other teams who'd played a lot of games at a high level. They'll probably get those too. They're going to have to reload on the defensive line. Obviously, they've been very good at developing players on the D-line through the years. I'm not worried about them. But yeah, that's a lot of talent to lose when you're losing Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham and Josiah Stewart. And I'm assuming Derek Moore, although he can come back if he wants to. Like, there's a lot to like about what Michigan can be. And because what Chiron Moore showed you this year is repeatable, and he's going to be able to do it consistently with better players or a more balanced roster in the coming years.
All while maintaining a culture that kind of made Michigan what it was.
Yeah, and now the question is, with the new player acquisition strategy, which is going to be, I always laugh. I years of reading MGO blog and the commenters there who are not super precious about paying players. Like, I think the assumption is that everyone at Michigan's super holier than thou about, oh, we can't pay players, or at least was. That's not true. Most of the fans were like, hey, it's cool if they get some money. And so the MGO blog posters would always joke about the money cannon. Like, you have all these wealthy alums at Michigan. They could what if they just fired a money cannon at the player? They're firing the money cannon. They will be firing the money cannon this week. And once the portal opens, they'll be firing the money cannon into that as well. Can you keep that culture going? I think you can. They did it. They've done it in the NIL era.
But what made the culture special was getting guys that were undervalued, developing them, keeping them in the program for 3 or 4 years. It will be very interesting to me to see if Michigan can play the reload game.
This is not going to be like Ole Miss, though, with a whole new roster through the portal. It will be more like, and I know you don't want to hear this, it'll be more like Ohio State this past year, where they had a bunch of guys that they had brought in as high school recruits.
More like last year's Michigan.
And plug and play. Yeah, and did some plug and play. The difference is Ohio State didn't take advantage of the talent on the roster. Chiron Moore has shown you, at least in this limited sample size, that he probably can take advantage of a roster that talented. And now that Michigan is ready to play that game, like, imagine, Ari, Michigan coming in a year or two with a roster that is as talented as the one that we saw at Ohio State this year.
I could never imagine that, but now
it's possible.
Yeah. I mean, Ohio State combined years of top 5 classes with the 4 most important portal gets of a cycle. Like, so that if Michigan gets to that point, I mean, this is what I always thought Michigan could be. So they're going to try to be that.
Yeah. And it's crazy. We always thought it would be one of the billionaire Michigan alums. It's actually a billionaire Illinois alum, Larry Ellison, that is that's stroking the Bryce Underwood check, but his wife is a Michigan alum, which, Ari, I think that tells us a lot about life in general.
That's why
happy wife, happy life.
Single thing
go blue
is through the Aggie lens. You know what I mean? I got my 4'11" wife who's not watched a snap of football since 2004, but she's pulling the spring on what I write. But yeah, you're right. I think Michigan should feel pretty good about where they're at. Beating Ohio State obviously is always a very amazing thing that you can feel for 364 days. But I think what it meant for the coach and the program, on top of the new direction that they're going from a talent accumulation standpoint, makes this one hell of a weekend.
And it's going to get much more interesting. National Signing Day Wednesday, transfer portal opening a week from Monday. Hey, listen, it wasn't the season you wanted in Ann Arbor, but there's a good chance you could have a lot more that are the ones you want if this keeps up.